Ribbon Perspectives18 presents an industry and tech disruptor. This is his 6th year at Perspectives. All the way from New York City, the founder of Kandy, David Walsh.
I want candy. I want candy.
All right, thank you. I saw them in 1983, I think, in Atlanta. Bow, wow, wow. What a hell of a night that was. It's good to hear that music. Anyways, so I arrive in LA 2 days ago. I get to the airport. I'm on my way to the curb. Of course, I pull out my phone. I'm going to grab my Uber. The Uber picks me up really quickly, which is nice. It's a beautiful day. I jump in the back seat, and I sit down, and right in front of me is this, like, pocket with, looks like a binder in it or something, and it says, "For your reading pleasure," like a big sign on it. So it's like kind of inviting. So I was like, let me grab that and see what the hell it is. I pull it out. I start flipping through it. It looks like a screenplay. And so I'm like reading the name of it, and then I see a person's name. So I pull out my phone. I'm looking at Uber, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's him. It's the driver. This is his screenplay. So I said, hey, and of course, real-time communications, I can see who this guy is. So I say, George, are you a writer? He goes, well, I'm an actor, I'm a dancer, I'm actually a poet, but I also write. He goes, but for the most part, I'm an Uber driver. So I said, now I know I've arrived in LA. All right, before I get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up Kandy. I'm going to actually start Kandy. This is what it's going to take. I'm going to try to finish my presentation before the whole Kandy code load is injected into a compute environment. So for anyone who wants to know how hard this is to get on Kandy, it's not that hard. It's actually going to be easier than you sitting through this next 20 minutes of listening to me. So just give me a second here, and I'll see if I can load this thing up. Okay, hold on. Okay. We should be going soon. Okay, bingo. All right, Kandy is going. Now I'll get started. So I always like to start with a story, and here's two people that I was a runner. I think many of you know that because I always reference these running stories. Of course, one guy here on the left, Steve Prefontaine. Not everybody, but a lot of people know him. They go by the name of Pre. He died in a tragic car accident at 24 years old. He's just an amazing guy, and all these famous quotes came from Pre. There was a couple movies about him, many books written about him, and he's just a legendary guy. And he had all these sayings like, to give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. And once he asked, I remember seeing this, reading this when I was a kid. Someone was interviewing, saying, well, do you think you can win? He said, well, I don't know if I can win or not, but I know somebody's going to have to bleed to beat me. And that always kind of like stuck with me. But here's the guy on the right, this little small, skinny guy, 5'5", Jerry Lindgren. And nobody knows Jerry. But Jerry has an amazing story that I think applies to everything that's going on with us in the marketplace today. And also his story is it's born here in LA. So I thought I would share it with you because it's just a wonderful story. So anyways, Jerry, unlike Pre, where everybody knows this guy was just amazing talent, nobody really paid attention to this kid. But in high school, in the indoor 2-mile, he broke the indoor 2-mile record by 46 seconds. Which in running 2 miles, if you can shave a second off a record time, that's an amazing feat. That's how talented he was. That record stood until a couple years ago. Edward Cheserek, a Kenyan, at 19 years old, broke that record on the fastest indoor track ever built at the New York Armory. Jerry did it on 11 laps to a mile wooden track with tight corners. In the 5,000 meters in high school, he set a record that was recently beat, but it stood for almost 50 years, was beat, and later on the person had been caught doping, so we don't know. So this is just an amazing guy. So here's the story. It's 1964. It's in the height of the Cold War. And JFK had recently been assassinated. Jerry is a senior. He's about ready to graduate. And they decided to put this big track event on here in LA, right here. And, you know, it's touted, you know, this Cold War battle, you know, the two best, track, countries in the world are going to come together. And the recruiters were out trying to find athletes, but they were having a hard time finding anyone to race the two world champion Russians in the 10,000 meters. Nobody, none of the Americans, Frank Shorter, all the giant names in running didn't want to race because they were afraid of losing. In front of this huge audience, they didn't want to be embarrassed. So the directors didn't know what to do, so they said, you know what, we hear about this phenom, this kid, this amazing talent. Let's make this like a David and Goliath thing. Let's change the script here and make it something cool. He can't win, this kid, Jerry, but, you know, it'd be something a lot of people would love to see. So they go to the coach, Jerry's coach, and say, how about, you know, getting Jerry into this race? And the coach says, well, I'll try to convince him. He talks to Jerry. Jerry says, okay, coach, if you think it's a good idea. He goes, well, how are we going to do this? He goes, you're going to train harder than you ever trained before. You're going to train, you got 6 weeks. He says, the race is going to be in early July. So for 6 weeks, he runs 200 miles a week. Now, you got to take a day of rest. So that's 6 days, and you got to do track workouts 2 of those days. It's at least 4 days roughly to get those 200 miles in. This teenage kid put that kind of time in. So the coach, he started reviewing, so I had come up with a strategy for this young kid, and he watched the tapes of the Russians, and he noticed that every race that they ran, and they hadn't lost in 2 years, had the same strategy. It's 25 laps for 10,000 meters. After halfway through the race, on the 13th lap, they're running every lap at 67 to 68 seconds a lap, 67, 68, 67, 68. On the 13th lap, the Russians drop the hammer down to 62 to 63 seconds, blow up the field, and what do? On lap 15, they go right back to that pace of 67 to 68. And so he says, Jerry, I'm going to train you on how to deal with this. So he starts Jerry out, run the first 12 laps, drop the speed down. Jerry's able to hand it, go back and run 1 lap at that pace. And each week he extended the distance for Jerry until after 6 weeks, he was able to actually run the pace that the Russians could run. Now, the interesting thing is Jerry turned around and said, but coach, all I can do is match him. How the heck am I going to beat him? He goes, Jerry, that's why we're going to do it different. He goes, well, what's that, coach? He goes, you're going to run 2 laps at that pace. He goes, coach, nobody's ever done that before. Can I do it? He goes, yes, you can do it. So Jerry, the 17-year-old David and Goliath, goes to that race that day with one intention, to beat the Russians. That's all he had on his mind. He wasn't David. He wasn't thinking he was going to be beaten. He went there with one goal in mind, to win. So the race goes off. Sure enough, halfway through the race, the Russians, they hit the hammer, they drop the hammer. Jerry jumps on them, and he's following as best he can. They come around lap 13. Jerry takes off again, right by the Russians. And for the rest of the race, he is running as fast as he can. He's running, he's trying everything he can to just hold on. And he thinks the Russians are right on him. There's 50,000 people screaming in the audience. Robert Kennedy is there. People are crying and screaming as this thing is going on. And he's doing everything he can just to make sure he's going to win this for America. He knows how important it is. He comes across the line and he wins. When he turns around and looks back, he realizes the Russians are 120 meters behind him. And he thought they were on his heels because Jerry had never run on a beautiful cinder track. He had run in the clay in Compton. We don't hear the spikes going into the ground. So the sound of his spikes going to the ground, he thought was the Russians chasing him. So the point of all this is that barriers are often broken when one doesn't understand they have limitations. And Jerry had no notion of limitations. And what we're seeing in the marketplace today is that there are a bunch of companies that are succeeding because they don't believe they have limitations. So every day at Kandy, what we're trying to do is think, act, and live digital in all of its forms. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So last year I talked about disrupt or disrupted. And what I love about this is that while the pace of change can sometimes feel like glacial, but the glaciers can't be avoided. Disruption will, eventually reach its destination. This disruptive innovation, whatever it is usually applied to something very small and maybe an unattractive niche. But over time, right, it changes and it improves in quality and capability, and all of a sudden it switches over to the mainstream. So in the early stages of this change, most people don't even notice it. They don't even realize it's happening until a shift is felt, and then bam, it's sudden. And everybody wakes up and says, wow, this happened instantly. Well, it didn't happen instantly. It was happening all along, but most people didn't see it. So these are companies like Uber. It's amazing how disruptive they've been, but they're not stopping now, right? They're becoming one of the biggest employers of talent, right? Through all these drivers, these freelance drivers, but now they're going to autonomous cars. Amazon, right? Biggest e-tailer in the world, but they just bought Whole Foods. Netflix, they started out not owning any content. Now they're investing $800 million a year in content. And Airbnb, they got started, didn't own a single room. And now they're the biggest, if you want to say, I think they're the biggest hotel in the world, but now they just went out and bought luxury retreats. And the most valuable music company in the world is Spotify. They're worth more than all of the big four record labels combined are. They've completely digitally disrupted the marketplace. And the question is, well, if you're an artist, do you really need to go to a record label? Maybe just go to Spotify. They're the ones who have the distribution. So what's different about these companies that you have to recognize is you look at them and you say, well, Uber's a transportation company and they disrupted, taxis and all kinds of, rental car companies. Well, no, that's a little bit of what they are. You say Spotify's a music company. Well, yeah, but what they really are is they're a data company. These are data companies. They know everything they're doing. They know where you are, what you like, who you communicate with. They know all your preferences. They are data companies, and they are mining this data in a smart way to evolve their business to disrupt others. And so we have to be very mindful of that there really are winners and losers, and you gotta think about that. And we all as an industry have to make sure that we are the ones disrupting, not being disrupted. So I'd like to say we're in the fourth transition in real-time communications. It started a long time ago with telegraph networks. Now, what's interesting about telegraph is it took 125 years for telegraph to actually peak. It peaked at 236 million messages. That's kind of what we do in about a second today. But it took 125 years to peak. And then the public network came around, the voice network. And that peaked at about 1.3 billion users. I think that peaked in 2006. But that took 50 years. And then the mobile networks came along, and in 40 years, they got up to 8 billion devices. And that's starting to tail off. It's starting to slow the growth. But now where are we? We're in the world of endpoints. We're in the network of everything world. And we're expecting to see 50 billion endpoints by 2020. And what you're seeing is with every one of these changes, every one of them, the change is faster and bigger than the one before and way more disruptive. So there's the wave of opportunity that we can all ride together. And what's interesting is we've seen the carriers be able to participate in every one of those changes. But there's also been new entrants that have come in as well. So anybody can get into this space if they have the imagination and the desire. So here's five companies who have focused on this fourth transition in real-time communications. Amazon, Google, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft. All five of them. They're going directly into real-time communications. They see the opportunity. And guess what? They're getting handsomely rewarded for it. Over the last 5 years, their market cap on a combined basis has gone from 1 trillion to 3.5 trillion. So they get it. They're on the wave. They're there. And they're seeing things different. They're like Jerry. They don't have limitations. So they look at the home and everybody's abandoning the home and they're like, no, we're going to reinvent the home with Alexa. And then you see, Facebook, and you see WeChat, and you see WhatsApp, and all these over-the-top services. And a lot of people just said, well, I don't know if maybe there's, I don't know if that's going to materialize. Now they're the biggest messaging platforms. So what's really interesting is that there are people that have decided a long time ago, we need to be in this space. But are the big five, are they just going to crush everyone? And what I say is, hell no, because we've got Kandy. We can enable everybody here to attack this wave, to ride this wave. So what is Kandy? It's simple. If you look at the bottom of Kandy, the foundational layer, it's built on ribbon communications science, our application server, our WebRTC gateway, our SBCs, our messaging platform, our policy and routing. All of this stuff is proven technology that scales. So we've built this platform in a very robust way. And sitting on top of that is all of those real-time communications capability, whether it's messaging, whether it's collaboration, whether it's voice, video, presence, all of that capability can be unleashed inside this platform, either through APIs or SDKs or all of these different wrappers. So the bottom line is this Kandy is a CPaaS platform, and it's built out of our science, and it allows carriers, ISVs, or enterprises to embed any of this stuff into any of their workflows contextually. And this makes businesses more efficient. It allows new businesses to be created. Kandy requires limited technical capability. You don't have to be a developer. These micro and mini apps and full-blown apps can be just accessed simply by clicking on an object in a portal and dropping it into an application and using it. Kandy can access any way you want it. You can have it in a public cloud, a private cloud, or a hybrid cloud. And I'm not going to get into too much of the detail because after me, I think in 2 presentations, Sasha, my partner, is going to come up and he's going to really get into the detail of everything we're doing with Kandy and his capabilities. But this is the basic building block of what we created at Kandy. So what can the carriers do to remain relevant? Like, what is it that we're asking you to do? And the first thing is we're saying quickly adopt CPaaS as a way to exploit this huge shift. That's the first thing. Get emotionally and get your head around that. Do you really want to be in this next shift or not? Because if you do, right, this is the way to do it. You adopt CPaaS. The second thing, use Kandy to unlock the potential of your network and build loyalty with your customers. The infrastructure is there. We're downloading Kandy. We're in 15 minutes into it. We're well on our way. And that's all it's going to take to enable you to take advantage of this market. And what is that market? Attack a $9 billion market that's growing at 23%. Now, we know there are people out there that are succeeding. Here's one, Twilio. They've done a fantastic job of identifying this market. Now, once again, I remember I mentioned how disruption seems sudden. Well, this is another company that looks like sudden disruption, but they've been at it for 10 years. But now they're moving into the mainstream. But if you look at the capabilities the service providers and the ISVs have, existing customer relationships, massive network infrastructure, the ability to bundle services, enterprise experience, and you look at what Kandy has, our rapid creation platform, our SDKs and APIs, our wrappers, and our carrier-grade infrastructure. If you look at that and you put that together, what do you have? You have a really competitive offering. So we're seeing is lots of our customers are recognizing this and they're jumping on the bandwagon. So Optus as an example, their Optus Live product is called Optus Loop Live. And what I thought was really cool about this is they went out and did some research and they were like, wow, you know what? There's like around 30 million lines, business lines, in the world that get converted every single year. And most of these are in small businesses, SOHO, SMEs, and particularly in their geography, they have a lot of small businesses. And they looked at what do small businesses use? They use their mobile phone, right? They use their mobile phone and they have a little key system in the office. And the two don't really communicate with one another. So they said, you know what? We want to build an application that allows a small business to have a mobile environment. So they went and built this application. It's really cool. You go to their portal, you set up your lines. You want vanity lines. You can pick the numbers you want. You set up your attendant console. You set up your voicemail. You pull out your credit card. And 5 minutes later, you're done. Now, how big is this market? Well, globally, if you say there's 30 million lines and 20 million of them roughly are in the small enterprise, and it's $20 a line per month, that's a $400 million a month new opportunity. Just that one little thing, $400 million a month, every month. And of course, Twilio's a $400 million business, 10 years. Here's one little niche in real-time communication, $400 million a month. So there's the opportunity, and Optus sees it, and they're chasing it. So this is really exciting. City of Los Angeles, and a lot of the city of Los Angeles, I've met a lot of you here today. Of course, I've met you over the last couple of years. These guys they're not waiting around. They basically said, look, we can get digital, we can go to the cloud, we can save money, we can do cool things, we can make the city better, we can service our people better. And they're in the process of migrating everything to the Kandy cloud, and they have 40 departments, 700 buildings, 50,000 employees. So their first step was, well, how do we get everything up in the cloud? We got 35 PBXs, we got hundreds of key systems. We have to get rid of all that. And then they realized, well, geez, that's going pretty well. What else can we do with this platform? So one of the things that they came up with, and this was a couple weeks ago, I was out to see the city of LA, and I was meeting with the folks at the library. And I said, so what are you doing with Kandy? He says, I'll show you what we're doing. She pulls out this app, and it's an active shooter app. And basically say, with all the stuff that's going on, we got to protect the people at the library possibly if there was an incident. So all they did is they embedded they take out the app, the City of LA app, and in the app, there's a button, and it's an emergency button. So you don't have to dial. If you see something that's happening, you just hit the button. Anyone in the City of LA can activate it, sends out messages. Our friends at Polycom did a great job, integrated the messaging system into all the Polycom phones, so even if you don't have a mobile phone, you can get noticed at your desk, sends out these alerts, right? It turns your phone into video immediately, turns on your presence, so it knows where you are, so people don't, if there's a panic situation, there's something crazy going on, immediately you can notify, and then all of a sudden you can start reporting it without having to do anything. So I said, well, that's really cool. I said, so what's next? He said, well, I'll tell you what's next. We deal with other types of disasters, like, there could be earthquakes. So we can integrate the seismic activity, and we can alert people if we see any seismic activity, and we can take action. All this. So this is where the world is going. It's all changing around this digital communications capability, this embedded communications. So we're really happy with the City of LA and all the wonderful things that they're doing. Simple things too, cities have massive amounts of directories of phone numbers, how to reach people. And it's really inefficient, if your child is being chased by an angry dog, kind of running to a website, trying to find a PDF and then dialing the number. I mean, that's not very efficient. All that is moving embedded, right? So those calls can be taken instantly. They know where the person is. They see the presence. They can see the caller ID. They know who they're dealing with. They can record it for future use. These are all the things that you can do in this new digital world. So KPN, here's another company who's jumping on the CPaaS bandwagon. For those who don't know, KPN is the biggest tier 1 provider in the Netherlands, and they have their product called Cubes. They have jumped into CPaaS. They're saying, I see the wave, I'm going to ride the wave. They need the technology to enable this. And IPC, I love this company. This is a financial fintech powerhouse. These guys have jumped onto the Kandy platform. They service 100,000 of the most active traders in the world across every major financial institution out there. And they said, we've got to go to the cloud. We have to be able to embed real-time communications and create a community around our users, because that's what the financial community is. It's a community. We need to federate address books. We have to be able to bring in different forms of communications on messaging side. We have to be able to do mediation around that. We have to be able to deal with compliance and regulatory stuff. How do we do that? They realized, wow, we can do that on the Kandy cloud. So they've embedded in the Kandy cloud and they've already turned up 2,000 users, and they plan to roll out to their whole entire installed base. So they're going to take Kandy into every major financial institution in the world. So we love these guys. And it's amazing, like just in the last 6 months, the amount of development and innovation that's coming out of this thing. They've actually gone to the market and say, that physical command center that we build, the turret that people sit in, all the software that integrates with applications, we're not going to make a physical device anymore. It's all going to come out of the Kandy cloud. And Ete Salat, and I'm down to my I'm down to my last slide. I lost. So Kandy is faster than I am. But so Ete Salat, another fantastic partner for us. We're so proud of this win. This is the first big win in the Middle East. And what's amazing about Ete Salat is they built the biggest brand out there. I mean, their brand is more well recognized than Mercedes-Benz and Louis Vuitton. And they've done it because they're innovative. And we've been working with them. They've basically said, look, we need to be able to better service the enterprise marketplace from small all the way up to large. And they have all these wonderful use cases that they're looking at, like remote medicine and healthcare, and how do we support people that can't get to the hospital. And they realize that embedded real-time communications is the way to make that happen. So we're really excited about this partnership that we have. I could stay up here all day and talk about the wonderful things that we're doing with all of you. And listen, we appreciate everything that you guys are doing with us. But the truth is, there's so much more to be done, and so much, we need many more of you guys to get on to the platform. And what I'll leave you with is that was Kandy in roughly 20 minutes. That's our story. It takes roughly 24 minutes. That's all. If you want to be in the real-time communications embedded CPaaS business, it's not hard to do. You just have to want to do it, and we'd love to do it. And I'm telling you, there's no excuse. Unless you're a diabetic, we want you consuming Kandy. So thank you very much.